Hi everyone and welcome back to part 23. So in the previous video we have completed our forgot password flow. Okay, now in this video we have to create this sign up or register flow. So we have this first initial screen in which the user has to simply fill in their first name, last name, email and password. Okay, and then we'll be basically making an API call to our server. Okay, we have already created an endpoint for this, so let me just give you a quick reminder here. So if you go back to your routes folder, okay, and look into this auth.js file, then we have this slash register endpoint and slash verify endpoint. So slash register will be called in the first API call, in which we'll submit the data, okay, and then we'll send the OTP to the user. Then in the next step, the user will be submitting back the OTP that we just sent to the user, okay, via email, and then we'll be verifying if their OTP is correct or not. After this is done, the user will be automatically kicked back into the application. Okay, so that's the flow that we are going to build in this video. But there is just one little issue here. We don't have any page for verification of OTP. Okay, so we have to first of all create that. Okay, and the only thing that we need to focus on is building the OTP input. Okay, so we are going to build it from scratch. We are not going to use any library. Okay, so let's actually start with that. First of all, I'll just close my terminal here. Okay, you can see our React app is running on port 3000. Okay, now after this I'm just going to close all of my open editors and collapse this folder. So let's now actually go back to our pages folder. Okay, then since we are going to create a new screen or a new page which is related to authentication, so I'm going to add that to auth folder. Okay, so I'm just going to call it verify.js like this. Okay, now let's actually start by creating a React functional component here. Okay, so this is our verification page, and now here what we really need to do is we just simply need to use a stack. Okay, we can actually refer back to any of these pages. Okay, the structure is going to be very similar, so let me just take it from here, this stack, and paste it here. So let's actually also get this stack imported from material UI. Okay, then after this we are just simply going to render some text here. So for that we can simply use typography component. Okay, and let me write here, please verify OTP. Okay, let me just complete it. Okay, one two more lines, then we'll actually set up its route, then we'll be able to see this page. So the next thing is, again we are going to make use of another stack. I'm just going to write this typography component. Okay, because we'll be basically instructing the user, okay, about the email on which they can find their OTP. So for now I'm just writing a dummy email here. Okay, and shortly we'll be replacing it with a variable. Okay, so let me just write it like this. Okay, now let me just format this. Okay, now we are going to set up route for this page, and as you already know, for that we have to move inside this routes folder which is present inside source directory, then inside this index.js file. So as it's very clear, we are just going to add a new children here. Okay, for this page, so we'll have to explain what element it's going to render. Okay, we are going to call it verify page. We haven't imported this yet. Okay, we are going to do that right now, and the path for this is going to be just slash verify. Okay, like this. Let me just remove this slash because it is already going to be there. Okay, next thing that we have to do is simply get it here. Okay, so we can just go down. Okay, and here I'll be importing this verify page, again making use of loadable and lazy. Okay, to import our page here. Here we just have to pass a callback, okay, which is going to return this import, and we can actually find our page like this. Just need to go inside the pages directory, then auth, and then verify. Okay, now after this I'm just going to save this. Okay, and let's actually visit our application. I'm going to refresh it once, since we have added a new route here. So now after our page is loaded, I'm just going to navigate to this screen which is called slash verify. Okay, auth slash verify, and here you can see we are getting this page rendered. We are seeing the text that we just added here. Okay, but it's not styled yet. Okay, so let's actually do that here. So the first thing that I'm going to do here for this top heading is I'll provide it a variant, and it's going to be h4. Let's save it and see. So the change is reflected here and it's looking much better now. Similarly, for this send to email, I'm again going to add some styling here. So for that we can just simply make use of this variant prop, which is going to add some already defined styles here. Okay, you can find more about it on MUI documentation. And for this stack I'm just going to add this direction row and some spacing here. Okay, so let's actually add spacing of 0.5. That means 0.5 times 8 pixels or 4 pixels. Okay, so let's just save it, and now this text is also looking better. So the next thing that we have to do here is to basically render our form. So for that I'm just going to make a comment here for now, because we haven't created that verify form. yet. Okay, so after this we just need to go inside the sections folder. Okay, then inside auth I'm going to create a new file and I'll call it verify form.js. Okay, let's just create a React functional component, okay, and export it from here. And the first thing that I'll be doing here is basically just creating a form. Okay, so let me just add this React fragment for now. The first thing that we need here is email. Okay, so for that I'm just going to write a comment here, get it from store. Okay, I'll show you how we are going to get it from the store. Okay, then the next thing is we just need to define the schema. Okay, so I'll write here verify code schema. Okay, then we can simply make use of this yep library. Let me get all of the required imports from here. Okay, so I'm just going to add it here at the top. Then we can just say yep dot object. Okay, all this save method here. Okay, inside that we can just simply pass an object which is going to define the schema for us. So since we are going to basically implement an OTP input here, and we'll be collecting 6-digit OTP. Okay, and each digit is going to be a single input form. Okay, so that's why we have to define all of these fields code 1 to code 6. Okay, there may be other better approaches. Okay, for now we are just going to implement this. Okay, because it's easy. So let's actually add some validation here. So what we are simply saying here is all of the codes that are going to be there has to be a string and it is a required value. Okay, that means you cannot escape and submit the form without it. Okay, so I'm just going to basically add it multiple times here from code 1 to, let's do it quickly. Okay, I'm just going to change all of the names here like this. Okay, so after we have defined this schema, the next step is to just define some default values. Okay, so I'm just again going to write some empty strings here. Okay, similarly we'll be duplicating it multiple times. Okay, now after this just change their names again like this, and then we just need to define methods here. Okay, or basically get methods using the use form hook, which is going to come from React hook form library. Okay, we have done this several times, so that's why I'm just writing it quickly. Here we'll specify this option mode. Okay, and this is going to be on change. Then a resolver. So for resolver we are using this yep resolver, and we just need to provide the schema to it. Okay, so we'll be passing this verify code schema here, and then the third option is going to be the default values. Now since we have this methods here, okay, so we can basically extract handle submit and the form state from here like we did in the previous videos. So I'll get handle submit, okay, form state, which is going to be extracted basically from this methods. Okay, and then we just need to define our on submit method. Okay, and this on submit will be called when we will be submitting the form. Okay, so since this is going to basically do some asynchronous task, okay, so we can just add this asynchronous tag here. Okay, then inside it we'll just add this try and catch block. Now what we need to do when some error happens, for now we are just going to log it to the console. Okay, then here in the try block we'll be sending an API request, so I'm writing a comment for that here. Now we are done with all of this form setup thing. Okay, next we can focus on building the actual JSX. Okay, so that we can see our form in action. So the first thing that I want to do here is basically get this form provider. Okay, because this has to be wrapped around our form. So since we have seen this already, we have to basically get this form provider in this file whenever we are trying to basically create a reactive form. Okay, then we have to wrap it with a provider, and we have done this in a previous video. And after that we'll just have to basically write some JSX for our form here. Let me also get this stack imported from material UI in this file. Okay, then we are going to basically pass some props to this form provider. The first one is going to be this methods. Okay, we are going to pass it as it is, methods like this, and then on submit. Okay, so for this on submit we just have to call this handle submit here. Okay, and pass on submit, okay, that we have created. For this stack I'm just going to give this prop of spacing 3, that means 24 pixels. Okay, and then what we are going to do, we'll be rendering our custom OTP input field here. Okay, and then the next thing is going to be our button here. Okay, so let me just get it from the login form. Okay, so that we don't have to write it again and again. So just like this we have imported our button here, which is basically going to submit this form. Okay, we just need to import the button component from material UI. Okay, and here you can see we are just going to change the text that is rendered inside this button. We'll modify it to this verify. Okay, and after that we just need to basically now focus on just one thing, and that is to build the OTP input. Before that, I'm just going to also add this verify form inside this verify page. Okay, since we made that comment here, so let's get that. Okay, verify form from sections auth verify form, and then I'm just going to close this element. Now you can just come back to your application and refresh this page, and now you can see we have this verify button, which is basically a part of the form. Okay, now we are just going to create this input. Okay, so for that we just need to move inside components folder, then go to hooks form. Okay, then we are going to create a new file here, and we'll call it RHF codes like this. Okay, then just simply create a functional component here. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is to define all of the props that we'll be getting here. I'm just going to destructure those here. So the first thing is going to be this key name. Okay, and if there is no key name, then we'll be using this default value, which is just an empty string. Then we'll also be getting this array of inputs. Basically this is going to be our list of all the inputs that we want to render inside OTP input. Like we want 6 OTP inputs to be there. Okay, so we'll be passing an array which is going to contain 6 elements. Okay, this will be clear once we add this component inside our verify form. Okay, then all of the other props will be there. Now after we have done this, we just need to basically add a reference here. Okay, so I'm just going to define it like this: codes ref is equal to, then we can use ref hook. Okay, we're just going to initialize it with this null value. Let's actually start with the JSX here. So first thing that we are going to do here is use a stack. Okay, to basically bind all of our inputs together. So here we are going to just give this direction of row. Okay, and then spacing of 2. Make sure you don't do any typo mistake here. Okay, then this justify content property, which is basically going to be center. Okay, after that we are going to just pass this ref here. Okay, which is basically going to be codes ref that we just created, and this can be basically useful when we want to implement the functionality, like when we have received our email. Okay, then let's say we copy our OTP on our clipboard, and then we just come back to our page. Okay, where we have to submit the OTP. And now if you just try to hit command V or control V, then in that case we have to make sure that we are auto filling. Okay, or filling all of the OTPs in the correct input. So for that we'll be using this reference. Okay, after this what we are going to do, we are simply going to render multiple text field components here. Okay, and for that we are going to map over this inputs array that we'll be getting as a prop here. Okay, so we just have to call this map method here. We are just going to provide this callback. Okay, which is going to return some kind of JSX. So what we are going to do here is we'll be basically getting this name property. Okay, and then in the second place this index. Okay, as you might know. After that, as you can see here in this RHF text field as well, in order to basically create a control component, we just have to wrap that with this controller. Okay, which is going to come from this React hook form library. Okay, and as a prop we have to pass this control. Okay, which is going to come from use form context. So let's do that quickly here. Okay, so I'm going to use this controller coming from React hook form. Okay, then as a prop here we'll be passing control. Okay, and this control has to be created using the use hook form. Okay, so use hook form is a, so let's actually use that here. So I'm going to write const control is equal to use hook form. Okay, let me just get that. So we are just going to create this control from this use form context. We have defined it like this. Okay, then the next thing here is to basically give a key. Since we are rendering a list here, so we can just use the name because it's going to be different for each element. Okay, and then there is another property that is going to be there, which is basically called name itself. Okay, and here we are going to basically use two things to create it. The first one is going to be this key name. Okay, and the second one is going to be the index. So that is why we are going to make use of this template string here. So the first variable is key name. Okay, as I just explained it to you, and the second is going to be just the index. Okay, and we just, since this index is going to start from 0, but we want to start our count from 1. Okay, so that is why we are going to just add 1 to it. Okay, like this. And let me actually move this here. Okay, since it's showing some error, and that is because we actually moved it outside of the backtick. Okay, so now this is corrected. Okay, I'm just going to format this document again, and then we can add some more props here. Okay, the last one is going to be just the render. Okay, so this render is going to accept a callback here. Okay, just like we did previously, and we'll be getting some props here. Okay, or basically arguments, so we can just destructure those here, and then we'll be basically returning the original text field component here. We can just keep it to self-closing, okay, because this is not going to accept any kind of children, okay. After that, inside this render, we can just get this field, okay, and field state. And this, from this field state, we can basically destructure this error, okay. Now inside this text field, we have to basically pass all of these field props. So I'm just going to write it like this, okay, since that's a, and for the error, like if there is any error or not, okay, we can use this error from the field state. So I'm using this double negation here to get the boolean value, okay, from this error. Then we are going to actually add this autofocus prop here, which is going to make sure that if the index is 0, okay, then it is going to be autofocus. What I'm actually trying to say here is that if we have 6 OTP input and the user just gets onto this page, okay, then we just have to automatically show the focus on the first input, okay. So that is why we are adding this prop autofocus. And since this is going to accept a boolean value, okay, so we are just checking this condition if the index is 0, okay, and we are checking for the strict equality. That means type and the value both should match, okay. Next thing is we just want to show a placeholder, okay, and as you might have seen in various applications, we just see this dash, okay, or some, or in some application we also see dot, okay, as a placeholder on OTP. And then the next props are going to be just on change, okay. This is very important because it's going to basically, like, whenever there is some input from the user, okay, then we have to make sure that we are responding to it, okay. What we are going to do here, since we'll be getting the event, okay, as an argument here, okay, and after that we'll be basically creating a custom controller here, and we are going to call that. Let me actually discuss it after we have rendered this text field onto our screen, okay. I'm just going to format this, and as you can see, we can, and as you can see, we are good to basically use this RHF codes in our verify form here. So I'm just going to add that here, okay, like this RHF codes. Then we just need to pass the required props here. So as I just explained, so that is why I'm just passing this key name as code, because we'll be adding integers from 1 to 6, okay, and that will be the name of each input. So I hope you understand that. And for the inputs, okay, we can just pass a array here, okay, and this is just going to contain this list, which is going to basically have these strings, okay. So it is going to go from code 1 to code 6. So after we have done this, okay, this is enough for now. We can just format this document, okay, then we can come back to our application and refresh this page. So now as you can see, our application is crashing after we refresh this verify page, okay. So that is because we have made some mistake here, okay, inside this RHF code file. So let me just inspect that here. So I'm going to just quickly pull up my inspector and then switch to this console tab. Then we are going to select this errors as well here, and you can see there is an uncaught type error, which is basically saying this cannot read properties of undefined reading array, okay, and it is basically coming from the controller component, okay. So let's see what's wrong with it. So we are passing these 4 props here, okay, and key and name are correctly placed, and after that there is this control. Let's actually see what's happening here, okay. So we just need to basically destructure this control, okay. So that is why it's complaining. Now after you add this brackets here, I'm going to save it again, okay, and then see, yeah. So this time we are getting our input rendered correctly, okay. But as you can see, there is some styling mistake here. We don't want it to be like this. We have to style it in a different manner so that it looks actually like a OTP input, okay. So we are going to implement this on focus here, okay. So here we'll be getting this callback in which we can get this event as an argument, okay, and on this event we can access this current target property and call this method select on it, okay. So that means whenever input is focused, okay, then what we are going to do, we'll be just going to take its current target, okay, and then select that input. So whenever an input element is going to be focused, okay, then we'll just select it. Back to the styling part, we can use this input props. We can use this input props here, okay, in order to style it. So I'm just going to use this sx prop here. First of all, we can define some height and width, okay. So let's actually focus on width first, and here also we want it to be conditional, okay. That means for extra small screen we want it to be 36, okay, and for the small screen we want it to be 56. That means for extra small to small range it's going to be 36, and for all the screen sizes above small it's going to be 56. Similarly, we just going to actually duplicate it for the height as well, because since we want our inputs to be in the square shape, okay, so that is why we are choosing the same height and width. After that, I'm just also going to access this input class, okay, which is basically a child class. So for that we can use this syntax, okay. I'm just going to set its padding to 0 and the text align property to center, okay, so that whatever input we give, it appears at the center, right? After this, we can also use this another prop which is also called input props, but it starts from this small I, okay. So here we can basically pass all of the props which are going to be directly applied to this text field, okay. So for that we can just pass this max length here, okay. Max length is going to define like how many characters this input is going to take. So we have restricted it to 1, okay, and the type for that is just going to be number. That means we are only going to accept numbers, okay, and that to one character per input, one character per input. Now as the last prop, we can just provide all of the other props that we are getting here. Now you can just save it and go back to your application, okay, and just refresh your app. So this time around you can see we are getting this OTP input and it's looking pretty much just like we wanted it to be. But the question here is like when I'm typing on it, then nothing is actually appearing, okay, and that's a problem. Let me just uncomment it, okay. For now it's going to throw an error, but let's actually implement this handler here, okay. So handle change with next field like this, and as you can see we are going to get these two arguments, okay. So I'm just going to get those here. So the first one is our event and the second one is the handle change, okay. This is just a function, okay, and we are going to actually call it at the end like this, okay. Now the first thing that I'm going to do here is we'll be getting few things from this event target, okay. So I'll just get this event dot target here, and then we can extract max length, okay, value and name. And if you are basically finding this to be hard, or if you are not able to understand something, okay, about the input that we are creating, then don't worry, this is actually part of the React, okay. So we can actually understand it in a separate series which is going to be entirely focused on React. So I'll be explaining how we can create various kinds of control components, okay, and what are all of the props that we can play with, okay. Now the next thing that we have to do here is we'll be basically getting the field index, okay. So let me call it just field index, and we can just get it like this. Every field is going to have its name and it is going to be like this: code 1, code 2 up to code 6, okay. So that is the name. Now what we are going to do here is, since that's a string, so we can call this replace method on it, okay. And every input is also going to have some key name, okay. So we are just going to replace that key name with this empty string, okay. And as you can see the key name is same for all, that means code. So what we are basically doing, for every string we'll be just removing this code part from the front, okay. So that will be our field index, okay. Now as you can see that is actually going to be in a string, so we are going to need to convert that into an integer, okay, in order to use that. So I'm just going to write here field int index, okay, that means in the integer form. So what we can simply do here is we can just call this number and pass field index inside it like this, okay. Now we are going to check what is the next field, okay. So for the next field we'll be basically making use of query selector, okay. So let me show it to you how we can do that. We are going to use this document.query selector, okay. For this selector we are basically going to provide this input, okay, and inside this input we are going to provide it this property name, okay. So we can basically construct name, okay, and let's see how we can do that. So for each name, as you can see, what we are using as name is simply key name plus index, okay. We are just concatenating them, okay, or attaching them inside one string, okay. So we can just use that same here. So we are just going to write key name, okay. And now please remember, let's say if you are on this particular field, okay, let's say zeroth field, okay, at the moment, and when you type into it then you want to switch to the next field, okay. So for this first field the index is going to be 1, okay. this is not the index from the array, this is the one that we have provided in the name. Okay, so that is why it's going to be 1 and not 0. Now for the next field we should get 2. Okay, so that is why what we are doing here is we'll get this field int index and then add 1 to it. So I hope I made that very clear. Okay, so I'm just going to write that here now, field int index plus 1. Okay, so we can actually make use of a pre-built OTP input. Okay, but I'm showing this to you so that you can construct your own input components if needed. Okay, you must know how to build the logic. Okay, and then the next we are going to basically check a condition here. Okay, like let's say you copied OTP from somewhere. Okay, and then let's say we are getting this OTP which is 778899. Okay, then let's say you just copied it to your clipboard and then you are trying to paste it inside this input component. Then what is going to happen, we have basically restricted the length of each input to be 1. That means it can accommodate up to 1 character. So that is why we are going to make sure, okay, that is followed. So we are going to check this condition here. We'll basically get the length of the value that we are entering there. If this value is greater than the max length, okay, and max length, as you can see, we have provided to each text field, okay, which is 1, so that will this value will be 1. Okay, so if let's say we have copied that 6-digit OTP and then this condition is basically going to be true, then in that case what we really need to do here is we are just going to use this event.target.value. Okay, event.target.value, and we'll be just using the first element here. Okay, like that will be a string, this OTP. Okay, and this OTP, so we are just going to make use of this first character here. Okay, and we'll enter that in the first field. I hope that's fine. Okay, and then now after we have basically entered the first character in the field, okay, then we what we need to do here is, in this case when we are basically copying and pasting it, okay, then we just need to basically make sure that we are also shifting the focus to the next field. Okay, so for that we are going to check this condition here, that value dot length, okay, if it's greater than or equal to max length. Okay, if it's greater than or equal to max length, okay, then what we need to do here is we are also going to check this another condition, okay, which is going to be that field int index is less than 6. That means it's not the last input. Okay, and then there is a third condition as well, that when we are getting this next field then it's not null. Okay, that is also going to make sure that we are basically switching the focus to a valid input element. Okay, then if all these conditions are met, then we are simply going to call focus method, okay, on this node. So I'm just using this focus method, okay, like this. So this is it. Okay, now our input component is completely done. Okay, you can try it out. So I'm just going to enter some values here. So as you can see now, if we are typing some OTP here, okay, then still we are not able to basically get our input. Okay, and let's see what we are doing here. Okay, so we have implemented all of these things correctly. The only thing that's missing here is that we also need to basically pass this event, okay, back to this handle change. Okay, so now this flow is completed. Again I'm going to save it. Then if we try to enter some OTP now, then as you can see we are able to basically get it. Okay, so now this form is also completed. So the next thing that is remaining is to basically add few dispatchers and reducers, okay, to our store for controlling this register flow. Okay, and then we can basically make some API call to this endpoint register and verify. So let's do that. Okay, so as a next step to basically finish this whole registration flow, okay, or sign up flow, we'll have to basically create thunk actions inside this auth.js slice. Okay, so here I'm going to create another function here. Okay, and then we'll export it. So let's just do that quickly, and I'm going to call it register user. Okay, because the first step is to basically submit the users first name, last name, email, and password. Okay. Similarly, like we received form values in our other thunk actions, we are also going to get that here as well. Okay, with the name of form values, or you can choose any other name, whatever you like. Next up, we are going to return this asynchronous function inside this function. So that is now going to make it a higher order function. As you might already know from the previous video, we are going to get this dispatch and get state as an argument. Okay, and then the next step is to just start making the API call. Okay, so we are making use of this Axios. Okay, and here also, as you can see in our server's auth.js file in this route, okay, we need to make this post API call to these endpoints slash register and slash verify. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to call this post method here. Okay, and then we can pass the path here, that is going to be auth slash register. Okay, and then in the next step here we'll be basically passing the body. Okay, so we'll be basically just spreading all of the form values that we are getting here. Okay, and then after that, in the third step, we are just going to set up our headers. Okay, so let's actually do that here. Similarly, as we did in the previous API call as well, since this is not going to be a protected route, okay, this auth slash register, so that's why we are not going to set up any authentication header. Okay, so the only header that is going to be set is this content type, which is going to be application JSON. Okay, now the next step here is to basically add then, catch, and finally block. Okay, so let's just do that quickly. So here, as you know, we are going to get this callback. Okay, let me also add this catch block here. Again, another callback in which we are going to get this error as the argument here, and then finally. Okay, so here also we can execute some kind of logic using this callback. Now what we are going to do here is simple. In this then block, we'll be basically getting the response. Okay, and let's also actually make this function, okay, like this, not an arrow function but this normal function, because we have been following that same practice. So here we will be getting this response in this then block. Okay, so what we are going to do here is we'll be basically, for now, we'll just console log it. Okay, like this, and after that we just need to go to this catch block. Okay, here also we are going to just console log the error, like this. Okay, and in this finally block, we are basically going to navigate the user to the verify screen. So for that, we are going to write this statement window dot location dot href is equal to slash auth slash verify. Okay, and I'm not actually making use of any hook here in order to basically post the user to a new page, because we can only use hooks inside functional component. Okay, and this is not the one. So after this, actually we need to make some changes here, like if there is some error, okay, then in that case we don't want to post the user to the verify screen. Okay, we only want to do that if there is no error in this API call. Okay, so we'll handle that. Okay, but for now, let's actually create the second function that we are going to need here, and that is our verify email. So this verify email is the thunk action that will be dispatched when the user will submit their OTP. Okay, so here also we are going to get the OTP along with the email. Okay, so that will be inside our form values. Again, form values is going to be an object containing those two properties along with their values. Okay, then let's actually return this asynchronous function from here, and again get this dispatch and get state here. Okay, we are going to actually make use of these here quickly, but before that we are actually going to again set up our API call. So this axios dot post. Okay, and this time the call is going to be made to another endpoint, which is slash verify. Okay, so we have to provide this path slash auth slash verify, like this. Then the next step, just pass the body. Okay, so I'm spreading all of the values that we have here, and then in the next step, let's actually set up the headers. Since this is going to be exactly same, so I'm just copying it from here and pasting it. Okay, like this. Now in this case, we are not going to actually perform any final action. Okay, so just then and catch block here, like this. Okay, let's actually define the callback functions here. So in the catch block, if there is any error, okay, then we just need to console log that. So I'm just going to write here console log error, okay. And in the then block, again the same thing is going to happen. So for now I'm just going to cut this then block from here, or basically copy it and paste it here in its place, okay, like this. So let me also remind you that when the user's email is verified successfully, then we need to basically log the user in, okay. But we'll be doing that after seeing what response we are getting back, okay. So that is why I have not dispatched anything from here as of now. So let's now actually go back to our application page, okay. And the page is basically register. There we have to basically make use of this register user thunk action. So I'm just going to go to this page which is called register, okay. Then inside this page we have this register form, okay. And when this form is submitted, so we just need to basically open this form, okay. Now when this form is submitted, okay, then we just need to make that API call in this try block. So for that, what we can do, we can just make use of this dispatch, okay. And then not this dispatch event, but dispatch which is going to come from use dispatch, okay. Here we'll be basically calling that thunk action that we just created, and its name is register user, okay. As you can see, it's going to come from Redux slices auth, okay. Then here we need to pass this data that we are getting, and please make sure that the key names here are consistent with what properties we are expecting in our API, okay. What I actually mean to say is that we are going to send value of first name, last name, email and password, okay, and the key name are these, okay, that we have defined in our schema. So this has to be exactly the same as the property names that we are expecting, okay, or we are using in our controller on our backend, okay. So that is it. After that, let me also remove this thing which is not actually getting used here. Now after that, we just need to get dispatch here, okay, and we have done this several times before. So we can just get it by using this use dispatch, which is going to come from React Redux, right. Now after this is done, let's actually also implement the same thing on this verify form, okay. But in this verify form, we also need to basically submit the user's email, and we don't know how we are going to get hold of the email that the user is submitting in the first part. So let's actually complete the first part, okay, which is to basically submit the user's first name, last name, email and password, okay. So I'm just going to navigate back to this page which is slash register, okay, inside our auth. Then here I'm just going to fill up some first name, let's say Shreyans, and the last name Shah. And then in this email I'm just going to fill up a random email here, okay. So let's just say anything like coding monk 23, okay, at the rate gmail.com, like this. And for the password, let's just keep this demo 1234, okay. Now when I click on this create account, okay, then you can go back to actually your server, okay. And you can see we are actually getting this post API call on this endpoint. This endpoint is getting hitted forward slash register, and we have successfully sent a response, okay. And this is our OTP that we have generated and sent to the user via email. So in the next step, we'll have to basically submit the user's email along with this OTP. So if you open up this verify OTP controller, okay, then you can see we are going to make use of the user's email and OTP, which is going to come from the request body, okay, in the next API call. But before that, I'm just going to open up the inspector tool, and then inside the console you can actually see what response we are getting. But since our page has been switched, okay, because of the finally block that we actually added there, so I'm just going to basically comment it out for now, okay. So let's actually move to this auth.js file again, and then inside this register user, okay, I'm going to just comment out this line, okay, which is basically redirecting our user to the verification screen after the first step is completed successfully, okay. So here again I will be moving back to the register screen, and then again I'm going to fill up those values. Okay, then if I click on the create account button, okay, then again we'll be getting some response here. So in the console again I'm going to basically actually hide this warning. Okay, this is just a simple warning from React, so I'm just going to uncheck this errors here for now. And you can see we are getting this response from our backend, and if you open up this data, then you can see we are getting this message which is OTP sent successfully and the status is success. Okay, so we can actually dispatch something here. Okay, so let's see what we can do. So as you know, in the next step we are going to make use of this email. So what we are going to do, we'll be saving this in our Redux store. So when the user is going to actually submit this, okay, then we'll be saving this email to our Redux store so that we can get it from there in the next step and submit it to the backend. So let's actually implement that here. So for that again you need to move inside your Auth.js slice, okay, on your front end application. Then here first of all we'll be adding some property here in our initial state, and that is going to be this property called email. Okay, and now we are also going to actually add one more property which is going to be error. Okay, so for the initial state, just to start, we are going to set that there is no error, okay, inside this auth flow. Now after that we'll be actually adding some reducers here. Okay, so the first reducer that I'm going to add here is update is loading. So what it's going to do, it's basically going to alter two properties. Okay, let me define what they are. So we are also going to maintain one more property here which is basically is loading. Okay, and we can basically make use of it to show that loading. Okay, like in this button, in place of this text, we can actually change its color to gray and show a loader here when the form is getting submitted. So for that we can make use of this state is loading, right? So here I'm going to just update these values. So the first thing is we are going to update the error. So for that I'm going to write here action dot payload dot error like this. Okay, and then in the next step we can just update is loading. Okay, so I'm going to write state dot is loading is again going to be action dot payload dot is loading like this. Okay, after this is done, and as I can see here we have introduced this property two times is loading, so I'm just going to make sure that it's there only one time. Okay, so after this we are also going to need another reducer here in order to basically save the user's email when the user is trying to register, like just we discussed right now. So I'm going to call this reducer update register email. Okay, and here again we'll be getting this state and action. So what we can do, we can grab the current state, get this email property on it. Okay, and then set its new value to be whatever is there inside this action payload email. Okay, so now after this is done, we are actually good to actually dispatch some reducer from here. Okay, when we are receiving this response. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to dispatch this action that we just created. So I'll call this dispatch. Okay, and this dispatch is coming from this argument. Okay, and after that we just need to basically access that reducer, so we can call this slice dot actions and then the name of the reducer which is update register email. And here we just need to pass the email. Okay, and this email you can actually grab it from the form values. So okay, as you can see inside this register form we are passing this email property, okay, with this key name email. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to write it like this, form values dot email. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. Now as a next step we are also going to dispatch update is loading that. Okay, so that is just going to update the values is loading and error. Okay, so what we can do here, simply write dispatch and then slice dot actions dot update is loading. Okay, and here we are going to say that after we have received the response, then we should set the value of is loading to false. Okay, and since this is then block, so we are going to set that there is no error. So that is why error is going to be false. Okay, here we have made some typo. Here in place of actions we have written only action. Okay, so I've corrected that. Make sure you don't make that mistake. Okay, otherwise you'll be facing some error. Okay, and I'm also going to make sure that as soon as we start making our API call, we set is loading to true. Okay, and at the start there is not going to be any error. Okay, so this is fine. And in our catch block we'll be actually again dispatching this update is loading. So after we have received a response, okay, even if it's failed, then also is loading is false, but the error here in this case is going to be true. Okay, then in the finally block, now we are going to make use of this property from our state, which is error. Okay, so I'm going to now show you how we can actually get our state using this get state function that we are getting as an argument over there. So we are going to write this if condition here. Here we'll write if, okay, and then get state, just call it like this. And onto this you can actually access the state using the property name. Okay, basically the slice name that you have defined here. So as you can see, for this auth slice we have this name auth. Okay, so in order to access this particular slice from our state, we just have to write this syntax get state and then dot auth. Now we just need this one property from it, that is error. Okay, so we are going to check if there is any error. That means if this is true, then the flow is going to enter into this block. But we only want to basically navigate the user to the next screen, that is the verification step, if there is no error. If there is no error, okay, so that is why we are writing it like this. Okay, so now our register so now our register action is completed. Okay, now we can actually move on to this verify email flow. Okay, so let's actually see how we can actually do this. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is we need to implement this action inside this verify form try block. Okay, as you can see in this on submit function or handler, we have to basically dispatch some kind of action from here. So again, we are going to write dispatch, and now after this we can just get this dispatch using use dispatch hook from React Redux like this. Okay, and after that we can just write here the name of the action that we just created, which is verify email. It's going to come from Redux license auth. Okay, like this. Here we need to pass form values, which is basically going to be an object. So in this data, we are only going to get this code 1 to code 6, okay, and that too in an object form. But we don't want that. We want to submit the OTP to our API with the key name of OTP, okay, and all of these codes should be concatenated into one string. And along with that, we also need to submit the email. Okay, so how we can do that? That is very simple. Okay, let's actually focus on the OTP part for now. So I'm just going to write OTP like this. Okay, then we can basically make use of this template string. Then we have access to this code 1 to code 6, okay, through this data. So I'm just going to write it like this data dot code 1. Okay, and then let's actually copy and paste it here. Okay, so I'm just going to update this from code 2 to code 3. Okay, and one thing, like, I've shown you how you can create your own custom OTP input. Okay, but you can also make it very much customizable. Like, you can actually introduce a prop here, like how many OTP inputs do you want, like 4, 5, 6, okay, or 8, whatever number you give it to whatever number you give. Okay, and then you can also basically create a general function which is going to do all this task. Okay, like you don't have to write all of the code names here, okay, or all of the field names here. You can just make use of a general function instead. And then after that, okay, we can just also give the email here. So how we are actually going to get email inside this form, that is the real question. Okay, so we, since we have saved it in our Redux store, so that is very easy. We can just get it here by using use selector. So I'm just going to write it like this: const email is equal to, we can just destructure it. Okay, from our auth slice. Okay, so I'm going to just get hold of my auth slice like this. You can call use selector and then pass a callback. Inside that you will be getting state.auth like this. Okay, so now this is also done. Okay, so we'll be sending actually an API request, or basically dispatching an action, which in turn is going to make an API call for us. Okay, as you can see here. Now when we are going to receive the response, then it's our responsibility that we basically log the user in. Okay, because when the user's email is successfully verified, then they will be issued a JWT token from our backend. So we just have to save that in our store and also update the property is logged in. Okay, so let's actually also handle that case. Okay, so we have already done that previously, so it's actually going to be exactly same. Slice dot actions. Okay, and then here you can call this action, which is actually named login. Okay, and here we are going to pass few properties. So the first one is logged in, that is going to be true. Okay, and the second one is token, and we can get the token from this response. Okay, so it will be response.data.token like this. Okay, let's actually also see, yeah, we are getting this error because we have not introduced this bracket here. Okay, it should be there like this. Now we just need to format this document and save it. Okay, so now we have completed this. Now we are actually good to go and test our flow. So here I'll be again submitting the same values. Okay, let's actually try to use an email which is already registered. Okay, so that is codingmonk22@gmail.com, and let's also use any password that you might want. Also, I'm going to just open up my inspector tool and then console. Make sure that you have cleared all the previous console so that we can see what response we are going to get clearly. Okay, now if I click on this create account button, then you can see we are getting this failed API response. That means our call has failed. You can see inside data we are getting this message which is saying email is already in use, please log in. Okay, and the status is error. Okay, now this is because we are trying to use an email which is already registered. That means the logic that we have basically built on our API is working just properly. Now then the next thing is to basically alter this email to a new email and then again submit it like this. Okay, and this time around we are actually getting kicked back. We are getting actually redirected to this new page which is verification step, and I'm just going to get my OTP from the console. Okay, I just console log it. You can also basically receive the email, but I don't actually own this email that I have entered here, so that is why I'm just logging it to the console. Okay, so that is 462894. So I'm going to just write that here, 462 and 894. Okay, now if I submit this form, then let's see what happens. As you can see, we have we are logged into our application. Okay, and if you go back to our database, okay, and if you refresh it, this collection, so the latest record is this email and the account is also verified. Okay, so now we have completed this registration flow as well. Okay, and the only thing that we need to do after this is just keep going with this chat flow. Okay, so I'll be introducing you with a solution for this in the next video, and we'll basically implement all of the features here, like sending this plain text message, rich media text message, unread count. Okay, and if the user is online or offline, all those features. We're also going to implement this audio and video calling feature, and also searching the messages. Okay, and we'll also be implementing the user profile, all of the features that we have designed in our UI. So make sure you watch this video properly. Okay, and make sure you complete your code till here, because after this we'll be implementing very important features of this application. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please make sure to like it. Okay, and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that yet. And if you want, you can also join our Discord group where you can discuss any of your doubt related to this project. Okay, so that's it. for this video. I'll see you in the next one.